So to begin our special class here today, let's start with this first question. What is the difference in acceptance of the LGBQT community by Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox Jews? Good question, but let me relate first to the second part of the question, and then I'll relate to the first part of the question. The second part of the question is Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox Jews. I've long said that I don't believe in labels. I think that labels don't belong not just to Judaism, but I think also to humanity. I think the second we put people in boxes, in labels, we've killed them. We've stifled their growth. We've paralyzed their soul. That's what parents do when they label their children. When I say to my child, you're silly, you're bad, you're good, I've labeled them. And by labeling them, that's the box that they'll be placed in. That's the cage that they'll be imprisoned in, to be more accurate. So I don't believe in labels, not for children, not for human beings, certainly not for Jews. Conservative, Orthodox, Reform, Reconstructionist, Humanist, there's so many different labels these days. I don't believe in them. I think it's a new thing in Jewish history. Labels are about 300 years old, 400 years old maybe. Judaism is about 4,000 years old. So it's pretty new considering the length of Jewish history. We've never believed in labels. And that's again, because you're either a Jew or you're not. And you're either growing or you're not. But that's it. Everyone has their own spiritual journey. So that's just to relate that part. And I know I'm going on a rant here. That wasn't really part of the question, but I had to relate to it since those labels were mentioned in the question. Yes, Janet, and then I can relate to part number one of the question, but go ahead.
Right. And I am on part number two. So I do understand, I've heard you on many occasions say what you've just said in reference to not labeling, and I understand that. But there truly is a difference with someone who practices Judaism more, and I don't know if I'm using the right verbiage, more than another person. So there is a difference, even though I know a Jew is a Jew and there's no difference and there's no, the labeling sometimes says, well, they're more, religious.
Observant.
Right.
So there is a difference, and I'm wondering if that's what, and I don't know, but whomever sent the question is like, if you're extremely religious, practicing, let's say, is that where the word Orthodox comes in, and then of course Conservative, Reform, etc.
Right, you're right. Technically speaking, yes, those labels relate to maybe your level of observance, maybe.
Right. That's what I mean.
Maybe. So if you're more observant, maybe you're Orthodox. If you're less observant, maybe you're not. I have no clue, and it doesn't even interest me. That's why I'm relegating those questions to the people who love labels. I don't. But I will tell you this, I think it's a shanda, to use a Jewish word. I think it's a shanda that those labels are in our Jewish field, in Judaism. What about, say, for example, basketball, okay? You name the field, and I'll prove it to you. But just basketball comes to mind. If a college player says, you know what, if we tell a college player, you're really not a basketball player. The real basketball players are the professionals, are the NBA players.
No, okay.
I mean, how is he gonna feel? We don't compartmentalize basketball based on the level of the person. We don't do that in any other field. So why do that in Judaism? And I'll tell you more than that. If we do that in basketball, if we tell the college basketball player, hey, you're not a basketball player, you're something else. Let me call you a Reform. Let me call you an Orthodox. Call him whatever it is. And then we've paralyzed him. And then why should he move on to become an NBA professional basketball player? Because you've already caged him. I think we don't do that in any other field. And I don't know if my analogy was good or bad, but we don't do that in any other field. Why do that in the Jewish field? I think not only that, it goes against the very essence of Judaism. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of my knowledge about Judaism. It goes against Judaism in its very essence. Why? Because Judaism believes that we are all unique. There would be no reason for my existence if there was someone else like me in the world. then let that someone else be Pinchas Allouche. Why do I need to be me? We believe that everyone is unique and everyone is therefore their own journey. And if I am saying, well, you're labeled, you belong to this box, so you like him or her in your Jewish journey, maybe you're different in your attributes and qualities, but in your Jewish journey, you like him or her, then it goes against that very essential belief that everyone has their own spiritual journey. Everyone is unique, not just in their qualities, but in their relationship with God, in their relationship with their own Jewish soul. Everyone is unique. So how dare we box them into labels of meat packing for human beings? Yes.
I really like for Sukkot, when we talk about the 4 Arbat Aminim, that we're all different, but we're all Jews under the Sukkah. And I think it's beautiful. We need never to forget that we're one people. That's what we are. But every of us is very unique, and everybody has their level of comfort for certain things. But really, we need to understand this unity and the difference, but always the unity of us.
Right. Good. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Danielle. Yes, Linda.
I was listening to you. You know, when I first came to the synagogue, I came up to you and said, I'm very reformed. I don't know if I belong here. And of course, your answer was, everyone belongs here. Okay. So, but I was thinking as I was listening to you that when you label and use, as you said, and box people in, they have no reason to reach outside the box to see what else is there. Yep. And one of the things that our synagogue does for me as what I would have called a Reformed Jew, or not as practicing a Jew as other Jews, is that you give me no boundaries, which allows me to grow at my own speed.
Yep.
But I'm not limited. And so I think that's a wonderful thing, that I have the freedom at our synagogue to grow as I choose.
Right.
Yep. That's it.
Absolutely. As you know, as God almost chose for you too. You have your own relationship with him. That's beautifully said. Thank you, Linda. I'm going to say this, and I'm not avoiding the first part of the question, because I'm going to get to it. But I'm going to add just one more thing, and that is take Judaism out of the picture. Take it out of the picture. Forget conservative, reform, Orthodox. Let's go to how we define ourselves altogether. Now, I think it's a problem, particularly in American culture. You ask someone here, who are you? They'll tell you maybe their name, and then they'll immediately tell you their profession. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a scientist. I'm an engineer. I'm a garbage collector, whatever it may be. But that's not who you are. There's so much more to you than just being a doctor. You might be involved with that 14 hours of the day, but you're still much more than just that. So let me ask you this question. How do you define yourselves? You don't have to answer unless you want to, but who are you? How do you define yourselves? And look, it's a question I've been asking myself a very long time. Every morning I wake up and I say to myself, who am I? So they'll tell you, well, I wear different hats. If they don't want to pick the doctor or the lawyer or whatever their profession is, they'll say, oh, I'm multi-hatted. I have different hats. But again, your hats are not you, no matter whether you have 27 of them or just one of them. So who are you? And if we were to ask this question genuinely, seriously, then the only way I think we can give an accurate answer to that question is by saying, I am a divine soul. That's who I am in essence. I am a soul with infinite potential. I'm a part of the divine. I'm a heavenly piece here on earth. That's who I am. That's really what defines us. Anything else that may be considered definition is not only limited and probably very, very temporary, because our professions are temporary, our bodies are temporary, but it's also inaccurate. The only truly accurate definition of who we are, of our very essence, is our soul. That forever remains, and that is as accurate as it gets, because indeed that soul is where all of our desires come from, all of our ambitions and motivations come from. So now, divine souls are very infinite. They're the opposite of finite. So how dare we give a finite label to an infinite being? Not just in the Jewish world again, but even in the non-Jewish world. So that's just to emphasize the point that we began with. Now, I know there's 2 participants raising their hands, I'm told here. So we have Ellie.
Yep.
And then I can't see who the other is because it only says iPhone. So I'll let Ellie start.
It's me, Rabbi. It's
I
Inka.
just want,
And then Inka. Okay, go ahead. And then I do want to go back to part 1. Go ahead.
do you want me to go first? It's
Yeah,
all
Ellie, go
not
for it.
on
Yeah,
video.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to tell you something, that by listening to you and the fact that there is no label as far as Orthodox, it's how much you want to learn about. Maybe that's the way you're going to practice, maybe the way some other Orthodox people are practicing, or Reform or conservative. But had I had you as a rabbi, and I'm 75, when I was 6, I would have wanted to go to Sunday school.
No,
Because every time I went, I either did something wrong, I felt guilty, I didn't know as much as the next person, and my family was very Reform. And so it took me to teach in a Jewish day school and I was 56, to realize how beautiful and how the ability, like you say, to create your own limits, go beyond the box.
right.
And I just really appreciate that.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll tell you this. I mean, it torments me, especially as a rabbi, that people still speak in that very narrow-minded and completely inaccurate language of labels. As I
Yes.
just said, labels belong to meat packing, not to
Thank you.
human beings, and certainly not to Jews. Inka, go for it, and I want to relate to number 1.
I just want you to, to me, there's the other side, which I think you really woke up the feeling for me about labeling and the dangers, and the limitations of labeling. But we are all unique, we are all divine, right? And we
Right.
do have our personalities, or we are who we are and what we do. So the other side to me of labeling is acceptance by others.
Okay. Very good. Okay, I would subscribe to that. Good, thank you, Inka. Good, all right. So now part number 1, and I particularly started with part number 2 of the question because I think it's very much related. The answer to part number 2, or what we just said about part number 2, is related to part number 1. What is the difference in acceptance? I'm just repeating the question so that we can go back to part 1. What is the difference in acceptance of the LGBT or LGBQT community by Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox Jews? So I can only say, look, I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the entire Jewish nation. I can't speak on behalf of other Jews. And again, I'm not going to go into those labels. I think I was pretty clear about that. Unless you want me to continue to go on this rant for another 30 minutes, I'm happy to. But I can only say this, that I view any definition of human beings as I'm going to say 2 things. Number 1, inconsistency with what we just said. I think that it's dangerous, truly dangerous. I say this to myself, I say this to my children. I think it's dangerous that when human beings fill in the blank of I am X or Z or Y, when they use any noun besides I am divine. Now, why? Because again, the minute I say I am a doctor, I am a professional basketball player, I am a homosexual, I am lesbian, I am straight, I think it's limiting our divinity. I really believe that. I don't think you can say I have a doctor job, I have something else, but I don't think we can say, try to mute everybody. You know what, Janet, I'm gonna co-host you. So
Yes,
you can,
mute everybody.
you can do that. There you go, you're the co-host now. So you can do that too. All right, but try to mute yourself so that there's no background noise to everybody. Unless again, you have something to say. But again, the minute I say I am something, I think it's dangerous. I think it's true for homosexuals, and I think it's true for straight people. I think it's true. That's not what defines us. Let's just keep that in mind. But going now to the Jewish perspective. And again, let me mute everybody once more. There we go. Okay. All right. So look, the Jewish perspective, there's a Torah that at least I believe, Maimonides believes, and so many other commentaries believe, that came from heaven and was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. Yes, the issue of homosexuality is mentioned in the Torah, and it's not mentioned in a positive light. It's true. I do recognize, on the other hand, that there's a strong inclination, perhaps even biological inclination, towards homosexuality or towards, bisexuality or whatever it may be, the sexual orientation of a human being. To condemn people like that because the Torah sees it in one light and they see it maybe completely out of their choice, they see it in a different light, I think is wrong. To condemn people's behaviors is completely wrong. To condemn people's sexual orientation is unequivocally wrong. That's one thing. The second thing is, so how do you relate to them? I think, look, I myself don't do all of the 613 commandments. I don't know if I do. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I'm not going to condemn myself if I miss one commandment. I don't condemn any Jew if he misses one or 500 commandments. That's their own spiritual journey with God. To condemn a person that's homosexual, and by being homosexual, he's not following what the Torah may otherwise say, who am I to do that? I love them just as much as I love myself. When I look at myself at the mirror, I'm very good at overlooking my negative faults or my deficiencies or my wrongdoings, whatever it may be. So why can't I do that with someone else? If he's not fulfilling the 613 commandments and only 612, then he's more, just by doing that, he's more righteous than I am. So who am I to even condemn people like that? Again, the Torah does not see it in a positive light, and there's nothing I can do about that, because if I accept the Torah as divine, then I have to accept it all the way. On the other hand, again, if it's someone's choice or maybe lack of choice, that's his biological orientation, then let it be. I'm going to love him maybe even more than I love myself, because in others I can see the positivity and I should not see the negativity. Myself, I should see my negativities and overlook my positivities. So that's my answer to that question. And again, I'm happy to answer any other questions in that topic, because we have more questions to get to. No one's raising their hand this time. Wow. Okay. So next. And again, feel free, if I missed you, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. No.
Rabbi, I sent you a question about the Torah has a definite solution for homosexuality. So how, pardon me?
What do you mean solution?
Well, there's no
solution in the Torah.
It doesn't tell you what to do with it. It's not an abomination.
That's a condemnation. It's not a solution.
But okay. So there is no immediate remedy for someone who is a homosexual.
I'm no expert. I don't know. I really don't know. Look, I think that everyone has their own inclination. Some people have sexual inclinations. Some have other types of inclinations.
No. I then this is my stupidity or limited knowledge. I thought that the Torah expects you to execute a homosexual.
Well, I'll say this. I think that's misinterpreted. Not only that, I also think that execution in the Torah is not like Iranian style execution. Execution in the Torah barely ever happened. In order to execute someone, you needed like 1,000 conditions first to be met, and then you can execute someone. So it really never truly happened. So people misinterpret not just that condemnation, but also I think the actual idea of execution in the Torah and other punishments.
Okay, because I thought it was emphatic. Thank you. I feel much better.
No, sure. Janet, you had your hand raised.
Well, I was a little bit confused because you had mentioned something. You had mentioned about like some, not everyone doing the 613. 13 is it? I don't even know.
Yeah. 613. You're right. Yeah.
Commandments, and I want to get a better understanding of what you said. If a homosexual lesbian, whatever, is not following, are you implying that it's a choice for them to be homosexual and they are not following? Or I guess that's where, in other words, we can get personal and talk about what people feel and what they don't feel. I don't know if it's
right.
a good forum, but is that what you're saying? No,
what I'm saying is this. Look, again, I'm no expert in this field, in the medical field in general, or in this field in particular. I'm no expert. So I don't know if it's a choice or not. From my readings, it's probably not a choice. It's a biological inclination that there's not much that can be done about it.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, I recognize the Torah doesn't speak positively about the act, not the being, because there is the act of homosexuality.
Got it.
Not the being.
Okay.
Now, how do I reconcile then the idea that maybe it's a biological fact for some people, yet the Torah does not recognize that and still condemns the act of homosexuality? How do I reconcile that? I don't really reconcile that contradiction. All I can say is that if someone doesn't follow one part of the Torah, it doesn't make them a bad person.
Okay.
And I have to love them just as much as I love people that follow the entire Torah. Because my love towards another person should not be conditioned by a person's acts or actions or inaction.
Okay, so it's the act of homosexuality that you're talking about.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you mute
Okay.
it?
Kana, go for it.
So much noise.
I can't hear.
Can you hear better now?
Sorry?
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, Kana. There's like this.
Okay, so years ago I worked for a gynecologist, and he said that it is a biological thing, that some people are born homosexuals. You know, so
Fine.
that's
Again,
all.
that's not my field. Maybe, yeah. And that's fine. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thanks for that note. All right. Next question. So this is a question I was asked just a few moments ago, but it's a great question, especially now for this COVID-19 era. The question is as follows. I know there are circumstances when Shabbat can be broken. The main one being medical, whether you are a doctor or patient. Is this pandemic not an emergency? There are people with depression and people living alone. Is it not possible to set up equipment before Shabbat and Zoom Shabbat services? I believe, the question was asked in light of fighting depression, and depression can be dangerous. So shouldn't we be Zooming services to help against depression? So number one, I'll say this half jokingly, half not, and that is that I'm not sure Shabbat services can cure depression, because I know of Shabbat services that actually add to the depression of people and does not cure it. So if it's proven that Shabbat services can cure depression, I'm sure Zoom services would then be allowed. Look, halachically, again, according to Jewish law, using electronics on Shabbat is prohibited. Now, we still have to come around to allowing Zoom services on Shabbat because of that reason. But, I will say this. I think that whenever it comes to relate to the first part of the question, whenever it comes to pikuach nefesh, to saving someone's life, even if that person's life is only in danger, only maybe in danger, right? As it says, fake pikuach nefesh. Maybe there's a small doubt that it's in danger, still have to break Shabbat. So again, I don't know if Zoom services can really help with depression or cure depression. So I don't know if it falls under that category. But I'm going to say this. I think that when halacha was written, or when the sages in general gave instructions, I think they usually took into consideration not just a part of the picture that they were saying, but the big picture. So let's look at the big picture of allowing Zoom services on Shabbat. If I am saying, well, Zoom services will only be for the depressed this Friday night, first of all, I might be embarrassing the depressed because they'll come on my Zoom services and they'll be labeled as depressed. That's why they came, because it's only allowed for the depressed. So part of the big picture, of looking at the big picture here, is saying, well, maybe I'm going to enforce them even more in that box. So that's one thing I can think of. Another thing, again, looking at the big picture, is that if I allow Zoom services for the depressed on Shabbat, or to cure depression, or to help with depression, that might be allowed for that segment of society. But then I'll have also other people joining, and then those other people will be joining by using electricity, and I'll be indirectly causing them to transgress the Shabbat by expanding that circle directly or indirectly. So that's another big picture vision of this question. And a third big picture is towards the future. And I've heard rabbis today, you know, because this is a topic of discussion as we speak. I've heard rabbis speak about the future. You know, it says that who is wise in the Mishnah? How do you find someone that's wise? Hago'eh tanolad, one who can see the future, see that which will be born, one that can almost play chess in his mind. So let's play chess for 1 second. Okay, another part of this question. If you allow Zoom now in the COVID-19, so will it create this snowball to allow Zoom into the future when you don't really need it? Will it cause people in other parts of the world, like South Korea, for example, that I believe has overpowered the coronavirus, allow people there that are Jewish, I don't know if they're Jews in South Korea, but just for the sake of the example, to allow Zoom to use? You have to think of the general ripple effect, again, the seeing that which is born when we relate to questions like that. So I hope that sheds some light on that question.
Rabbi, I wanted to say,
yes.
South Korea, they're infatuated with the Torah. Many of them are studying the Torah, so maybe that's where they get their smarts from.
That's it. It's true. The schools there study the Talmud, and by the way, they study. I know this because I'm Rabbi Steinsaltz's student. They study the Steinsaltz Talmud. So
Perfect.
If they are studying that, there's no doubt that that's where they're getting their wisdom from. I agree. Okay. All right. Next question. So 2 questions. Number one, what is the source of the Star of David, which has become a very big Jewish symbol? And second question is, will we continue to study via Zoom even after the coronavirus? So the second question is easier, so I'm going to answer that question first, and I will say yes. My hope, I think that's one of the great blessings that came from the corona, this ability to have Zoom classes that expanded, thank God, our reach so much more. So we'll definitely continue this, and that's the plan. I even have the spot in the sanctuary already where I know the screen is going to fit. We have the technology already being worked on. So that's going to continue. Question number 1, what's the source of the Star of David? Some of you may be shocked to hear this. I've investigated this. And that is that the Star of David, in essence, in origin, is not a Jewish symbol. It's an Arabic symbol. And one of the proofs is that, for example, in Jerusalem, I don't know if you've ever stayed at the Waldorf Astoria or at the David Citadel Hotel on Rehov Agron, then you'll see that there's a cemetery that's not a Jewish cemetery. It's actually an Arabic cemetery. And the tombs there have a Star of David on them. It's a very old cemetery. It's about 800 years old. But they have a Star of David on it because that's maybe where it comes from. And another proof is that the furthest we can go in Jewish history to find a Star of David associated with Judaism is really to the Maharal Shul, to the synagogue of Rabbi Yehuda Leib Lau, the chief rabbi of Prague of some 500 years ago. So if you visited Prague, you may have been to the Alt New Shul. That's the first connection between the Star of David and a Jewish institution. There you have a Star of David in the walls. Now, why was it associated with a synagogue for the first time then? I don't know. But it's only 500 years old. 500 years is recent history in Jewish history. That's again about 4,000 years old. So it may have not been a Jewish symbol at its origin, but it's become a Jewish symbol. It's become a Jewish symbol to the point that it's part of the Israeli flag today, as we all know. It's part of many synagogues. We have it hinted in places in our own congregation at CBT. People use it also as a chain. You know, people have Star of David chains. Why is it called the Star of David? David had his shield. I don't know if he had that star on his shield. No one knows what he had on his shield. May have had a different, you know, archaeologically, they have found shields of King David. The Star of David was not found on his shield. I'm saying shield because the Star of David in Hebrew is called Magen David, which means the shield of David. So maybe there's association with the shield of David as far as that star goes. But no, it wasn't. There was actually the symbol of Judah, a lion, found on the shield of David. So it's not a Jewish symbol. And I know people are shocked to hear this when they hear it for the first time. But it's become a Jewish symbol. And I will say this, it's not the only symbol that became Jewish over the years. I think the Khamsa is also a very Arabic symbol. And it became a Jewish symbol just this past maybe, 80 years, 100 years. So you have symbols like that. I think the only real Jewish symbol is the menorah. That we know is for sure Jewish. That came from the temple, not just the second, but also the first temple. That came from the tabernacle, from the times of the Jewish people in the desert. That we know is Jewish. But it doesn't mean that because it's not Jewish at its origin that we should dismiss it. If something has become Jewish, as Jews, we've adopted a symbol to be Jewish, then let's continue to thrive with it, especially if we've given it so much significance and meaning. I know the Star of David has multiple meanings. Some say it represents the alliance between God, the Jewish people, and the land of Israel. And if you look at the Star of David, it's 3 triangles. So it's those, it's 2 triangles, sorry, 2 triangles superimposed on one another. So that triangle represents that alliance. We've given it meaning in so many different ways. So let's continue. Why not? But at its origin, it's not a Jewish symbol.